I came to address the capital improvement plan again. I know I'm like a bad penny that just keeps coming around, but I know that hasn't been completed yet, and I wanted to offer some further thoughts about it. I know that Richard Egan has probably given you, or will be giving you one that Marty Nichols kind of came up with that is let's say it's a decent first step, but it's not very supportive, it's not very conclusive, it's not very extensive. And what I would like to see really is a melding of the budget plan and a capital improvement plan. Basically, that's kind of a situation where we're developing a foundation, we're developing a game plan, we're developing priorities, we're spending for all of the projects and the maintenance in the county, and we're figuring out some way of measuring it, and at year end that there's some kind of report card. We got A, B, and D done, but we didn't get C done. You know, and then is C still important, or do we need to roll it over, move it up the list, down the list, whatever? But there's some kind of an organized method for all of this. The other thing is that people would like to know, where are the pots of money? And somebody says, well, there's a big pot over here. Well, yeah, but it's only earmarked for roads or for buildings or for maintenance, or whatever it is. People would like to know about that. It just is more of a case of transparency. It lets the people become more involved, and I just think it would be a great idea. And as a guideline, that's where I think that maybe we ought to be going. Last week on the TV news, the city of Reno was doing that very thing. As a city, they were going over their strategic plan. So other places do it. I gave to Richard Egan, or emailed it to him yesterday. The state of Massachusetts has sort of a guideline for communities. It really is not, the way it's exactly set up is not appropriate for Lassen County, but it gives us some other thoughts. Basically, that there's a way to go. There's a blending of budget. There's a blending of all the maintenance. We have a lot of buildings and equipment here that are old. We need to sort of know about that. To me, the idea of proceeding with a pool or with another board of supervisors room is idiotic without that plan in place. There needs to be priorities.
Capital improvement discussion, the plan is a good one to transition into.
Do you want to do the Big Valley one-stop item 9?
Yeah, we'll go back to that.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. What I presented to you today is a capital improvement plan that was proposed by prior County Administrative Officer Martin Nichols. It appeared on the agenda December 17th and in your packet, but due to the length of that meeting, it was pulled from the agenda. And so I'm bringing it back to you today to review. The plan essentially proposes to use balances in the accumulated capital outlay fund to make some improvements to several facilities and utilizing the ongoing revenue from that fund to purchase equipment like we have been doing, ongoing maintenance and an ADA compliance plan. In my view, the plan is a good start, and I think the county has been righteously criticized recently in the past for not having a plan, which is the duty of the county administrative officer, which I've been reminded of many times recently. And it is something that needs to be done. I don't really believe that this plan does justice to the long-term needs of the county's capital requirements in terms of financing those, and I tend to agree with Mr. Hodge this morning that we need to match the budget and the funding with the plan. I'd like to do that. That's going to take some time. I think in the interim, it would be a wise idea to adopt this plan and then immediately give direction to revise it so that we have a plan in place to start with and then work from that. If there's any questions, Peter, Larry, or I will try to answer them.
I have a question. So what, knowing that this is just like in the infant stages, so what would the reason be, instead of working on it for another 6 or 8 weeks and then adopting that, what's the reason behind going ahead and adopting this, even though knowing that it's, you know?
Sure, good question. And I guess I would envision that the long-term capital improvement plan is going to take some time to develop. It's, in my view, and if I'm wrong, tell me, it should involve perhaps several public meetings, involvement of all departments in the county, to flesh out Supervisor Chapman's idea of building facilities on Courthouse Square, dealing with everything from a Roosevelt facility to the jail to outlying facilities from the city. I think it's going to take a little more time and deserves more time.
Right. Yeah. But what would still the reason, what's the reason for it?
Well, there are a couple things in this plan that the board's already started to work on. And I think you want to start working on this, continue to work on for the remainder of this fiscal year at least. The Veterans Hall improvements, for example, what am I missing here? There's 50,000 in there for approved projects, and those escape me right now, but the board put 50,000 in there for some projects that are already there. I guess that would be the only real reason to do that.
If I could add a commentary, since there are a lot of people who are very knowledgeable experts at asserting what has been the case. Back when the CAO's position was created back in the mid-late 80s, I was not on the board at the time. But when I returned to the board and the first CAO departed, not too long after that, that was when Mr. Bixby was hired, and he was the one that really defined and shaped that office through the 90s, and I think he was there for a little over 10 years. He basically restructured the way the CAO's office, after it had been initially set up and was established, and in that he delegated to the CAO under the ordinance. So the requirement for a capital improvement plan basically is a county-defined requirement. That was something that Mr. Bixby, and he took that very seriously. I recall from that era. He was very organized, looking to. He had a number of things that he wanted to do. The odds and ends of buildings that we've got scattered around, not only the community here in Susanville, but throughout the county, was something that he wanted to look at. The efficiency of. You got heating costs, you got all kinds of utilities, you got maintenance. I mean, the very issues that have dealt with that one stop down in Hurlong. I mean, that was the center focus. I mean, he took and modernized the way we manage our fleet in terms of capitalizing it and expending it and having the fund to be able to buy new vehicles. He was the one that brought that to bear, working with the sheriff at the time. So that was, as an administrator, he made that, this was part of it. And now that we have under the budgeting requirements under the GASB rules, the Government Accounting Standards Bureau, in terms of quantifying what are potential liabilities that we have, not immediately, but here in the near future, that's going to have to be something that's going to have to be quantified and put in place as it relates to our budget. So there's already a requirement that whatever your long-range planning is needs to be, fundamentally incorporated within the long-term budgeting process. So the seeds for this particular document here emanate really from, I call it the Bixby era, working with the Public Works Department at that time. So this document that we have before us, we've seen numerous times over the years, and it basically is Public Works, since they're charged with the maintenance of the buildings. I mean, before Peter it was, Larry, before Larry it was somebody else, but anyway, coming down through that time frame. And so I would say during the mid-2000s, when Andy Whiteman was here, he fumbled around with this document, working with Public Works at the time, bringing it forward. It was always part of the budget binder that we have in terms of what our needs that kind of lay out there, and where we could go with funding, what can we do to consolidate and get into a better situation, kind of like what we do with the motor pool fleet. The idea behind the task force, and the reason why I pushed for that, and I appreciate the board being willing to get that up and running, is I've been listening for a good 10 to 15 years that we need to do something, especially now that the courts have left, in terms of revitalizing Courthouse Square. That's right at the heart, I think, of the capital improvement programs, because what we do there and how we do it and what we accommodate and do it in a proper way will eliminate probably 2/3 of the things that would be on this list here, because we would replace it with modern, efficient buildings. And hopefully this task force can contribute to the long-range discussion. And I think, Richard, I appreciate his recognition that is melding of that. And I think the public process, instead of going out and trying to fix up a bunch of old buildings around town, including this building here, I mean, long-term as well as short-term, if we can accomplish something good in the next 5 to 10 years on Courthouse Square in terms of revival, there's no need for the county to have this building. It would be one that would be disposed of to another entity or whatever, back to the private sector, because the functions that are in here now would be relocated back, to more suitable quarters that could interact in a more efficient fashion. And with modern construction, have maybe some of the advantages of the green technology for our energy needs and stuff, and operating on that particular site. But, Bixby, he maintained this. Andy Whiteman, I don't think it was something that he was keen about. I mean, it was part of the mix, but in terms of making it the center focus of his attention. Then, of course, he was replaced by John Kelson, and John was, administered in a different environment, a different way. This was really not something that was high on his agenda, so I think it sort of kind of languished. If it wasn't for Public Works, be it Larry and Pete and Tracy Totten and others maintaining this here, it probably would have been maintained. And then we had the short period where Tom Stone, and he's the individual that, I guess in evaluating his job when he first came on board, he zeroed in on that, because one of the things he brought to the table when he applied for the job that I think impressed the board at the time was how in Colorado, when he was on the board there, he built this and he built that, and he's got his name on this building, he's got his name on that building. And so to him, the capital improvement thing was probably, of all the CAOs, that was the one thing that he could really identify. And he talked to the board about it early on in his tenure. He actually brought this document, the same document from Public Works, to represent as the basis of the capital improvement program that he felt that needed to be put in place. And of course then his tenure was short-lived, so once again the thing sort of, other than Public Works holding on to the document they generated, I think it was Larry did that for Tom, and it was on a big 11 by 17 spreadsheet laid out. I mean, it was several pages thick, and it does the same thing that this right here does today. And of course through the interims, and when you have interim leadership in there, it's kind of hard to launch a new initiative. But it is something that we need to focus on. So those who suggest that we've never had a capital improvement plan, maybe it's not put into a nice consultant-related type of with spirals, and we pay $200,000, and it's kind of another one of those reports that sits on the shelf and collects dust. But in terms of a working document, it's always been part of the budgetary process in terms of the items that need to be given focus to, funding, getting the new roof on the courthouse and so forth. Tearing down the new old jail, the 1970 jail, was on that document for several years. It took the board, I think, insistence after being pushed to the side. Bixby wouldn't do it, Andy wouldn't do it, John wouldn't do it. Tom, was here just a brief time period, but it really took Crabtree and Egan, when they were in the interim, and John Blacklock, and finally got the contracts in place. And when you look at this thing now for Courthouse Square, you don't see the demolition of the new old jail. But you had to demolish the new old jail in order to open up the space to look at whatever sort of future facilities that can be developed on that site. And that's, that was one of the keys to it. But it was part of the same document. I'd like to see us, expand this, develop it, put it into a meaningful form, and that's where I think the task force, and hopefully by the end of next year, maybe as a parallel to the process that Mr. Egan, working with Public Works and maintaining and vetting this document in terms of its current value, dollar-wise, because that $5,600,000 worth of improvements that are identified as that needs at some point to be incorporated into our budgetary documents as one of those potential liabilities that sit out there that we need to look for funding to be able to do, whether we do it through financing, or we set aside cash and do it like we did with the OPEB for the retirees in terms of taking X number of dollars. Maybe You know, each of the departments that we have in the budget, they put money in every time they use their car, every mile they accumulate, they pay into the fund. You have your replacement fund. Maybe what we need to do is budget the fact that we, you know, here's your square footage for your office, your budget will pay X number of cents per month, per year, and that goes into the fund that helps either renovate that space or replace it when it is due to be replaced. So those are concepts I think that can be pursued, and I think would be in the best interest of the county. And I would say that this document here this is probably about the 10th or 12th rendition of that since the Bixby years. So it's not something that was just newly created like some people. Maybe it's been newly discovered by some people, but it's been a document that's been around for a long time. And I think that that needs to be part of the commentary. And I'm glad it's on tape because I want to make sure that it's not lost to posterity.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe, for that. Any other comments by board members?
I have one question. Richard, going back here on this second page, whatever it is, on 2A, we're talking about the jail and the replacement of the control system.
Yes.
We're talking about financing it. I mean, how is that going to be financed? Do you have any idea?
The way Mr. Nichols had projected that would be from the balance in the ACO fund,
Utilizing the ACO fund.
the Community Capital Outlay Fund. And that issue, and Mr. Minot can address it better than I, is one of those things that it'll work until it doesn't work, and then we'll have to replace it. Maybe on short notice. Is that fair?
And we're working right now to, I mean, obviously we want to avert that disaster, because that would be nothing short of catastrophic, Richard. That would be an instant doubling of the staffing pattern in that jail to keep it operational. So we're working through those bid specs now and trying to put that together as we speak, so hopefully we can get it funded.
John, what's the life on that control panel?
It is, it was born with the building, Tom, so it's circa 1990, and
Coming up on 25.
sadly, it was old technology then, and now those old switches and those old computer control cards and stuff, those are dead. This is something that should be done with the computer system in today's technology, so
Yeah.
it should be 20+ as we make this transition moving ahead.
The board took a tour, Tom, it was about a year ago now.
I went through there.
Did they take you on a tour?
Yeah, I went through there about 3
I was
months
gonna say,
ago.
if you haven't, it'd be worth doing. That control panel is.
It's sad state,
Yeah.
and it endangers our staff there too.
Okay, any other quick comments from the public on this?
It's not going to be quick, Gina.
Have 3 minutes.
I've been very, very patient with you gentlemen today, and I would like to take over this capital improvement program. I actually did some research and I found a how-to book on how to select a committee, make your bylaws. It contains a eight-month timetable. It walks you through all the steps of doing this, and it melds the capital, the money, and the plan.
Is that the one from,
Massachusetts.
yeah, I forwarded that on to Richard, and he's having a.
And I would actually like to offload this responsibility from all you busy people and help the community become more involved in the process. I just find it, let me calm myself down. I find it, I'm trying to stay within the 3 minutes.
I'm just joking.
Very important for us to be good stewards of the people's property and their money. And that's what this does. And it really offloads a lot of the responsibility and a lot of the pressure that you feel when things aren't properly planned and executed. And it makes your job easier. It encourages careful project planning and design to avoid costly mistakes and to help the community reach its desired goals so that we have a pool before 10 years go by. So with that,
Thank you.
I would be happy to volunteer to help head up the public side of this process, to engage the community in the process, to follow the steps necessary in a proper way so that people are involved and there's transparency.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I would, and thank you for sending that, along to us, and I would,
Mr. Chairman, on that line, would it be possible to share that with the rest of us?
yeah, well, I didn't wanna, I just, I got it last night.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say,
Seen it at midnight or
you know,
something.
if we're gonna.
I can forward it.
Yeah. Well, what I was gonna suggest is that, this capital improvement thing, as I see it, needs to be ongoing, not, maybe not weekly, but maybe on the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month, it's on our agenda. And, maybe as the last item of business, and if we don't get to it, in the morning session, we come back and give it its fair due in the afternoon. And it does, it needs to be, it's not gonna happen quickly, it's gonna need several meetings and a lot of input, but and rightly so, it does need to get updated and dealt with and ongoing. So, and I would like to suggest that at the next, not next Tuesday, the following, that the
25th.
capital improvement is on and included as a copy of
Of that, okay.
that there and for everybody. And we go, so, anyhow. Eileen?
In the current projects, the first couple of pages, you have the priorities for this fiscal year, I'm understanding that. And you have 2E, security improvements. It says this is an allocation for some, as of now, unspecified improvements that will improve security for Lassen County employees, $25,000. Is there more information on that?
There's no more detail on that.
Okay. So we have $25,000 in there. Why? I mean, it's been put as a priority.
Right. I can't speak for Mr. Nichols, I don't know if he had other things in mind, but my understanding of that is general security for employees at the
Okay.
various
What about the
facilities.
public that go into your buildings? I mean, is it like surveillance, do you think, where you're gonna be able to protect both the public and the employees?
I think, as a general rule, the protections for employees would also protect the public if they're in the same space.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melody, do you have your hand up? Sorry, I didn't see you.
I just wanted to add that, I don't know what that particular item was about, but I know we just did some security upgrades over at the public health building, and that was following an incident where we had a threat, someone was gonna come in and kill people. And we asked the sheriff's office to help us by doing a tour of the building, and so we upgraded a lot of door locks, upgraded our plan. We made some changes that were not terribly expensive, but they have to be done in order to protect staff, and we'd like to do more, but there's always that trade-off between bulletproof glass and good public service, so those are the kinds of things I imagine were behind that, but I think it would be very useful to have all the details so somebody would know what the $25,000 was anticipated to be spent on.
Thank you. Okay, before, so we'll kind of wrap it up here, is there any other comments? So we'll resume in 2 weeks then?
We'll re-agendize it for the 25th.
Okay. Thank you, that passes. And I would just like to quickly readdress H3. I'm sorry,
We haven't done H6 either.
ended that off prematurely. It was the suggestion of this CAO. You made the recommendation that we approved what we have now, which we could either do, or we could, if you think there's a little bit of fine tuning you want to do between now and when it comes up in 2 weeks and you adopt that, or what do you recommend we adopt this now?
I would recommend we adopt this and we'll take,
Regardless if we adopt it or not, it's the de facto plan that's been in place for a number of years, and so
Fair enough.
it has its own life to it, so.
yeah, so I guess there's no action required.
Is it the pleasure of the board to adopt?
Well, it gives us.
Formally adopt
Well,
this?
it was adopted by previous boards at previous times, but I mean, I think for this board as a starting point, I think if that gives Richard something to do, it doesn't hurt to redo it, so.
Thanks, so, yeah, so I'm looking for a motion.
It's already been adopted.
I'll make a motion to adopt the preliminary CIP.
Yeah. I'll second it.
Yeah, the preliminary one with a lot of work to be done to
Okay,
it.
and under discussion, before we take a vote, is there anybody from the public that wants to comment on it? We're considering adopting this as a starting point. Moving forward with our meetings twice a month, we dedicate a large portion of each meeting to work on an improved plan. It's a work in progress, but this is something to formally adopt today, so. Any comments on that? Hi.
Oh, there was one thing that I didn't say. I was just in my mind thinking about what Mr. Chapman was saying about how this whole concept of melding money and plan budgets and buildings and inventorying things, and all I could think of is, as long as we've been in business as business owners, we've had that. Maybe it's inbred when it's your money. You're always looking at where you can save it, where you're wasting it, which buildings aren't being used, what you can get rid of. So I'm just happy to see that government is finally catching up with an organized plan for becoming more like a profitable business. That's all.
Yeah, thanks. I am sure we all agree that we're looking forward to catching up, and we will. I think the board's committed, and Richard's committed, and we can't dwell on the past, we can only go forward. So, but thank you, thanks for that. Okay.